Fort Wayne, Indiana, and I'm 25.
All right, cool. So what kind of artist are you?
I'm a singer. I would like to also classify like a genre to give you more perspective, but I'm pretty diverse in that regard. I graduated from college with a degree in opera performance, and then from there I've been kind of singing jazz and R&B and hip hop and pop kind of stuff as my mainstay, and then occasionally I'll kind of put my foot back in and sing opera with like the Philharmonic or things like that, really, really randomly and not that often. But
Awesome.
that's the kind of thing I do, I guess.
Okay, and question, do you think people are born artists?
um, yes and no. I think people are kind of intrinsically born with musical talent. Like music is like inherent in every one of us, and it starts like in the womb. Like you hear your mother's heartbeat, and that consistent rhythm is like pulsating constantly for 9 months. So like you are inherently born with music. But I think true artistry is something more than just being born with a natural talent. It's like something that's developed, and it's like the same with like like it's like same with like an athlete. It's something that's you got to put in like meticulous work in training whatever you think your art is, um, and then at some point you kind of elevate to a status where you're able to call yourself that artist, and you're constantly learning. Like there's no limit. There's no like top point where it's like okay, I've
Mm-hmm.
reached here, I'm gold. Like that never happens. You're
Mm-hmm.
always improving, you're always getting better. But I think the what makes an artist, in my opinion, is that they are constantly achieving and striving for that greatness. And that's where like artistry and like someone who is just enjoys music, that's where they separate. Is someone who enjoys music or enjoys art is someone who like watches it and plays it, but doesn't play it to like elevate it. And I think artists in there, and I'm using music as my reference, but because it's what I know. But I think artists in general are people who um, aspire to push the boundaries of art, and that's kind of a weird concept again because you can define art as it's defined differently by who is defining it.
Mm-hmm.
But I think an artist is not necessarily born; it's cultivated.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Awesome. So when when and why did you start being an artist? When and why did you start singing?
well, I've been singing my whole life. I know. I have like home videos of me singing when I was like 2. The Sound of Music. How do you
Yeah.
solve a problem like Maria? I would sing that in front of my aunts all the time.
Mm-hmm.
And throughout like grade school, all the way up into high school, I had like sang in church choirs. I was a soloist for different choirs and such. Um, but I really knew that it's like what I wanted to do, and I wanted to pursue a career in art or in music.
Mm-hmm.
At one specific moment, it was I was performing a solo in front of my high school, and it was an entire song. It was just kind of like on a whim. I asked my teacher, "Hey, yo, we're at this assembly hall right now. Would you mind if I did this?" And she was like, "Sure, go for it."
Yeah.
And so I sang it, and I felt this like unreal sense of love, and it was like a mixture of the applause and the focus on people, and I felt it because you could see like the people's happiness that was being brought to them. Like they were just impressed and like, wow, this is like happening in front of us. And
Mm-hmm.
so I was happy because it was like really cool to have that experience of like 400 people. It was
Yeah.
like your own concert. But I was also happy because it was like I am bringing people joy. And I thought to myself, like, if I can do that on a consistent basis, that's like all I need in this life. And so that's when I really said, okay, this is something I could really choose to pursue and try to like endeavor in.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Sweet. So what makes being an artist so significant to you, and why are you still an artist today?
That's a tough one. That's actually one I've kind of thought of a lot. I think what makes me want to continue to be an artist is throughout like humanity and everything like that. There's a lot of like things that divide people, and I think one of the few universal languages is like art, music, and dance because like you don't have to understand what's happening fully to like really let it touch you. Like I
Mm-hmm.
don't have to know how to do or how to paint specifically to know that that painting brings me some kind of emotional feedback.
Mm-hmm.
Same with music, same with dance. It's all part of a language that is like incorporated in every culture. Not every culture has certain things, but every culture has music from the dawn of time, and every culture has had art. You know what I mean? And every culture has had these things. So I think what I'm inspired by is that it's a communal thing, a universal thing, and that I think if used the right way, it could be a tool to really like unify people as opposed to constantly dividing people with all that's going on around us today.
So you think that the arts, so music, dance, and visual arts or whatever, have the ability to break past like limitations and boundaries between cultures?
Absolutely.
What about the arts lets that happen? What about the arts gets through that? What's your opinion? What's your thoughts on that?
Well, that's a tough one. I don't know. I don't know if I can pinpoint specifically what about
yeah.
art does that. I don't know. Again, I would relate back to the idea that there's just something intrinsically universal in it, like it's just inherent in all of us, and so that it's because it's universal. I think what makes art so what allows it to break through walls is that everyone will experience that. Everyone's going to experience like a flow of emotion to something of art, to some medium, and so I think that probably just that again, just the universal thing.
So from the beginning of being an artist to now, has art changed you? Has it changed your perspective on life? Has it changed your perspective on people? Like,
oh, absolutely, yeah. And I remember I graduated high school, and I had that performance, like I said, that made me want to become a singer and artist. And I went into college thinking like, okay, I'm going to get this degree in opera kind of thing. I'm just going to get my 4 years and go out. And then like you learn the lives that these people have, these musicians who. A lot of my professors like traveled the world. They'd be like, "Oh, I'm gonna leave for 3 weeks because I got to go to Germany and sing this opera." And it was like, you're like experiencing things. There's a weird beauty in like getting out and about and just like seeing these different cultures, and it allows you to again kind of unify things because you can bring them into your culture by like saying, "Hey, this is what I do," and vice versa. And so I was like really inspired by all these professional musicians and at the school who were like, yeah, we're teachers, so we're not making like a lot of money, but we're still seeing the world and we're still like having positive impacts on people's life. And what I found most thrilling for me was that the majority, like 95% of these teachers are all just ridiculously talented, like top level virtuoso talent. And you find the majority of the reasons for why they do what they do are not their like own self vanity. It's for like communal gain, and that's again kind of like reinforce this idea that like music and art can be a universal unifier. You know what I mean? So that was like a huge thing for me. That was a huge like switch flip whenever I saw all these people who, if I was this talented, I could not say in my youth that I would have not been that vain. Like I would have been like, look at me. I am.
Me and my bad
yeah,
self.
check me out. You know what I mean? And to see all these people who are like demigods in the world of music and stuff, just be like, yeah, it's okay, I just do this for the love. It's like, whoa. So it really just took me aback and like made me like check out my own ego and be like, okay, what is this really doing for me? What does music really do for myself and other people? And kind of made me like just like put things in perspective really more than anything else.
So do you think that there are things that I guess through the lens of art you can only experience through the lens of arts, like in other areas of life you wouldn't experience this, but what are those things that, okay, in art you experience this, whether it's music you experience it, or whether it's dance you experience this, like something that the arts allows you to see?
I think truthfully, in my own opinion, it's like the expression of the human soul. Like I find that a lot of life around us, you're kind of stuck in the monotony, you're kind of stuck in the robo thing, like you have to do this job 40 hours a week because you got to survive, So in like that struggle for survival, people only really see what you're allowing them to, because you're not really focused on like expressing yourself. You're focused on like, I got to get by. And so what art does is allow you to like release that inhibition and like uncage your soul. And so I think that's what people are attracted to, is the fact that it's like somebody or some people who are unafraid or unabashed to like just uncage it. And that raw emotion, I think, like gets to people and makes them want to do the same. Like I want to have that kind of ability, or I want to just be able to like free myself occasionally. You know what I mean?
Awesome. So when you're not singing, when you're not creating, when you're not doing the physical thing of being an artist, how does being an artist apply to your life?
It's pervades every part of my life, like every aspect, because the majority of my friends are musicians. So like even when I'm not singing or I'm not playing, I'm not creating, I'm around people who have the same mentality, and I'm around people who have the same desire. So I'm always talking about music. And like specifically with music, you can't literally go anywhere without hearing it. There's background music, you know what I mean? Like it's always going. So it really does like kind of seep into everything in your life. And and then as you become as an artist, and like I find that like in my own experience, I found like dancers and musicians are really good at like putting themselves into what they're doing. You know, this is not just technique. This is like the essence of me. And I found that like that's I don't know how to explain it. I found that's kind of like freeing in a way, and because it's again it's you're kind of caged, and so because of that, and going back to your real question about like how does it pervade the other aspects of your life, because I'm around like-minded people, I'm also around like open people, like very people that are open with their own souls and open with themselves, and that's how you know you can trust people, is when they're trusting of themselves and their own insecurities and whatnot.
Awesome. So what does what does an artist being an artist do for you on like an emotional level, like a spiritual level, like a physical level? Like what are some examples of that?
I'm a very social guy, as like you know, but I like my privacy, and I like my, you know, I don't often bear the inner workings of myself because it's not often called for. And like if you're like just walk out to someone and like I'm gonna show you everything that I am, it's kind of like hold on, man, fall back, you know. Like, so what it really does for me is it's like a release. It's like my emotional tank gets like full, but I can't like just be talking about like how I'm feeling or whatever all the time. And so when I'm on stage or whatever, that's like the time to like, okay, empty the tank, and then it refills over the week kind of thing. So for me, it's more like a release than anything, and it's allows me to kind of like, if I'm singing a specific lyric, I can like really feel that lyric because I'm like relating it to what I experienced in the past week that's been bottled up kind of here, and so it just kind of allows me musically, and that affects me physically too. The tension goes away. You're just like, okay, I can just pour all this out here. And so like as far as physically and emotionally and like spiritually, it's all just a release for me, which is what feels great. And my mother was always one that said that like, when you pray, you know, that's one prayer to God, but when you sing, it's two prayers to God. And so I was always like a big believer in kind of like singing is a great way of praise, and so spiritually it also is a big like influence on how I conduct my inner workings.
So what inspires you and motivates you to create, to sing, to be an artist?
People who are older and more accomplished than I. You know, like I have this view of, you know, like here's what I'm capable of now, and then you see someone shatter the wall of what you're capable of, and just be like, and it, you know, let you like soak in. Wow, they're doing these weird chords, or they're doing these weird harmonies and stuff like that, and I never even conceived those. So what inspires me is really just like the constant inflow of knowledge. Your walls are being broken and shattered down. You're like, oh, here's information, and so you see people like I was talking about, like my teachers who are in their mid to late 40s and 50s and stuff, who have attained and soaked up all this information. That's somewhere I'd want to be. You know, at that age, I'd want to be someone who could like look down and say, here's all this information, and I'm going to pass that down. There's something really beautiful about that to me, about just like gifting that to the next generation and so on and so forth. So that's very inspiring me too. And honestly, I find that most modern pop music and stuff is void of like substance. And another thing that really inspires me is to like bring substance and like content back into music beyond like this whole we're here for the party kind of thing. You know, that whole vibe that's like apparent now in most music.
Awesome. So when you're you're on stage, you're getting ready to sing a piece, or you're writing a song, or you're doing something that pertains to your art, singing and whatnot. When you're completed that, when you're done, when it's finished, what's that like? What's that feel like? What's going through your head? What's going through your heart? What are you feeling when that's happened? When then it's a complete work, you're like, I'm done.
There's a weird balance there, because you'd almost think that it's like freeing, but it's almost kind of upsetting in a way, because then you have to kind of, you know, you're done, and you have to like go back to like, all right, now I got to shell things up again for a minute, you know, and now I got to be like casual Evan. I can't just be like, you know. So there's kind of a bitter sweetness in it. There's a sweetness in being like, you know, this is done. The show is a success. I was also able to like let myself go in within it. You know, I did everything that I was capable of doing in that moment, and for that reason, it's a success. You know, like gave your best effort kind of thing, regardless of outcome. And So there's a joy in that, but there's also like a sadness, like those 5 minutes of that hour is done already, and you're like, well, darn, I gotta wait till next Saturday
Yeah.
to go out there and do it again. So it's kind of a bittersweet feeling for me, honestly, because that's where I feel most at home is up here. And so like if I could just stay up here, you know, if my body allowed it somehow,
Yeah.
I would. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Awesome. So do you think, is being an artist easy? Is it easy to sustain? Is it easy to be an artist, or is it difficult? What's it like?
Being one as like being a person who is enthralled by art and is a artist or wants to strive to be an artist one day is easy in that, like, because you have love for something, it's never really a day of work. You're like, this is a passion, this is what I love anyway, so it's easy in that regard to like motivate yourself. But it's very hard, like financially, to find like a solid like a day job or anything like that, something that would be like steady, both income and everything like that. It is very difficult. And right now I sing with 5 bands, and I still have a full-time job on top of that. So you kind of have to make it a second priority for a while, because it's just not sustainable in an environment that's either a small locale or if there's not like an organized, not union, but organized kind of musical scene or company kind of thing to like lock into. If you're like freelancing, it is very difficult, and there are a lot of musicians at Sweetwater. The majority of them are all like freelance musicians, and it's like you got to book your own gigs, you got to be marketing, you got to be on your game at all times. And so that part is difficult, to be like constantly like there are no breaks, because you don't have enough money to afford a break. You know what I mean? You just got to keep going. But it is easy as far as like, this is what I want to do, and every time you go out and play, it reaffirms that. Like, this is the kind of feeling I want to bring to people every night.
Why do you think, like you're saying, it's hard, it's difficult to sustain financially that? Like, why do you think that is inside of the economy? Why it's so hard to sustain being an artist in today's age, in the place that we live in, as far as finance? Like, what makes it less valuable, like in specs with other things?
I think it's harder because society generally thinks the arts is kind of less logical. Like, what are you bringing to society in a monetary way? What are you contributing exactly? And so I think you have these like engineers and stuff who are like, I'm bringing this, and it's capable of sustaining a job, because that's where society is moving, into that whole like, we need physical things, and so those type of people do well. But art is a spiritual thing, and I think that because it's the value that it brings is not monetary, it's more like it's like a personal thing. It's harder to sell to people because they don't have something to hold, and we're in a society now where like, if you don't have a monetary thing, like, that's, what am I holding, and so it's really hard for people to, I guess, invest in something that they don't see investment return in physically, and they see it emotionally, but like, for some people that's just not enough. I think also it kind of depends on the confines of your locale, because some places don't have large enough venues to have a show that would bring in enough income for you to be sustained for a week or whatever. You're playing at bars and things like that. So it's kind of a weird mixture of like the way society is moving or where it's moving to, and also a mixture of where your specific location is and what your situation as far as like places to play are.
Right. Yeah. So what do you think marks a good artist? What do you think that you're like, yeah, that right there?
My first thing is like, and I haven't really thought this way until kind of recently, because I've had people kind of influence me as of late. But my biggest thing, I think, what makes an artist is someone who is communal, someone who is doing this for like the right reasons, for the sake of other people's like well-being. And I think that's the beauty of art, and kind of the burden of art is you are one of the few people that can bring joy or sadness or any kind of emotion in an instant to people, to a vast majority of people. And so you're burdened by like, you're kind of trusted with these people's hearts and emotions for that moment. You can't break them, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I think that's wait, I forgot what you were asking.
What marks a good
artist? Community is what marks a good artist, in that regard. That's my number one. And then secondly, my other thing is like humble work ethic. You can have, and because talent is great, but like you take to the next level of talent with like be staying in your lane and being humble and working. So if you are a worker, and that's where you find all these great artists around here, they've just spent their lives like working and working and working. I don't think, and the beauty of them being humble and everything is I don't think they even think they're artists. Like that's kind of the weird contradiction is most great artists perceive themselves as just, people who are giving of themselves to other people as opposed to like truly great artists.
Yeah.
And that's kind of a weird relationship there.
What's something you've learned through the arts, like the most significant thing to you that you've learned through the arts from the beginning of being an artist to now, your whole walk, your whole experience, your whole journey? What's something that you would say you learned that's significant to you, that sticks out to you?
Ooh, that's tough. I guess the biggest thing it's brought me, aside from just like my own freedom to be myself, has been like perspective, and just with the world around you, with the people around you, and I've had shows where I walked in and seen somebody that I saw at a past show or whatever, and I was like, I don't really like that guy. And by the end of the show, there's just something that like drew you together, like you kind of, your inhibitions about people kind of fall away, and you never expect to see certain people at certain events. Like I would have never expected this guy to like this style of music or this style of dance kind of thing. So like, I think my favorite thing about it, or what's been the most eye-opening, is how easily it breaks down walls. And so it's just showing me a lot of like the kind of goodness in humanity, as it were, if that makes any sense.
So, is art powerful? Do you think art's powerful?
Oh,
and
yeah.
Why?
Oh, I think it's, oh God, yeah, I think it's one of the most powerful, if not like the most powerful thing, because throughout history, art and all the mediums of art have been used to like help political movements, to help change grow. And the other reason I think it's probably the one is because, again, I don't think there's a lot of other times in people's lives when you can be so open with like who your inner self is. And like if I think as a whole, as a world, if we could do that more often, or felt comfortable doing that more often, we would have a lot less problems, and people would be a lot more honest with themselves. There would just be a lot less like confusion and division if people were willing to do that on a consistent basis. And so I think what's powerful about art is that it's existed from the dawn of humanity, and it's been the way that since the dawn of humanity that we have done that. So like, there's not much else that can, that survived this long, that can allow that to happen.
Right.
And so I think that's like super powerful, because it's like the only thing that can allow that to happen.
Right. Well, that's all we have.
Ooh,
that's
on.
it.
I'm sorry, I'm rambling. I took
that's
too long.
great. Thanks
Sorry
for
going on
coming out here. I appreciate it.
It's a pleasure. I had a great time.
Great to know more about you and the arts and how they've affected your life and everything around you.